Welcome to Wrasslin Raw!
All right, you're listening to Wrasslin Raw, the podcast that takes you back to when Raw became war and Attitude ruled. Thank you for joining us. You're here with Ryan Arico.
I want to see the dairy farm! Woohoo!
Joe Giammatteo.
Tammy Wynette, this one's for you.
Oh, boy. I loved it. I popped for that. I am the one and only Jason Bartlett, and we're going to examine WWE history one pay-per-view at a time. But first, just some news that we'd like to talk about here in the greater wrestling world. It was actually brought up, well, in the news, but then also by one of our listeners on YouTube, frequent listener, 79 cents out of a dollar, wrote on our most recent episode, that would be the April 20th episode. I'm still way before this one, still in 1995 Raw podcasts of yours, but I'm sure you've all heard about the passing of Sid Vicious by now. I know he was someone you all used to enjoy and like overall, hearing you speak fondly of him and his work in the episodes I'm still at, and I know you've mentioned wrestlers' passings before, so he was just interested to hear what we were going to have to say about that. And speaking purely for myself, I loved Sid. He wasn't always the tightest worker, we'll say, and there was definitely some stinkers that he was a part of, but as a presence, as a character, even if his ring work was not consistent, Sid himself as a personality always was. You could always count on Sid to just be a big, crazy motherfucker that always looked good. And that kind of reliability is something that you don't always get.
I guess to agree with you, I always loved Sid too, but also to agree with you, his ring work wasn't always the best out there, and his mic skills sometimes could veer off into the downright bizarre, but he brought an intensity that was just hard to deny, and it made you want to cheer for him because he just seemed genuine psycho, that is, but he played that character perfectly, and he is a great memory from my childhood. So it is sad to see him go. I didn't know there was anything wrong with him. Apparently it was cancer. That was the first I heard about that, though. So yeah, terrible shame.
He came back and we got to witness his, 95 to 97 run here. And he was great at playing that crazed lunatic, but he was also hilarious.
Yeah.
A lot of times it was very funny. Reliable is a good word. Bartlett, I think you mentioned when we talked about Bret Hart after the screw job is how Bret Hart carried the company through a really dark time. And I think Sid helped out with that in 95, 96.
He was a big part of it.
Yeah, he was champion for a little bit there. And
lots of stories with Shawn Michaels. And
yeah, he was a reliable worker. And all I have to say to Sid is, thank you, my man.
I wish I would have thought of it sooner. It'd be nice to have the sound of a lion roaring for Sid.
Guatemala.
The greatest lion of Africa and ever.
And ever.
Probably my single favorite line of his from the entire time, the entire run of his that we watched.
Yeah.
He had some good ones.
Guatemala. All right,
There's apparently documentaries out there about the lion you could find. So
yeah.
He was a badass. Just like the man himself. A badass.
All right. So in this episode of Wrasslin Raw, we're going to be talking about Unforgiven. Now, I just want to throw in a quick disclaimer here. Technically, this is called In Your House. I think it's 21.
21.
Yep. Unforgiven. However, I'm just calling it Unforgiven because if you go to search for this on the Cock, this is season 1, episode 1 of Unforgiven. So
good luck finding it in Your House.
Yeah.
Not there.
Well, as always, wrangling the Cock is such an insufferable experience.
You gotta be grease lightning. Catch that.
Unforgiven was recorded on April 26th, 1998, and was recorded at the Greensboro Coliseum in Greensboro, North Carolina, and features Jim Ross and Jerry the King Lawler on commentary. Are you guys ready?
I am ready.
Ready.
All right, then. Let's get into it. I should have mentioned at the top that since this is a pay-per-view episode, we're going to be doing star ratings and Meltzer's star ratings and all of the usual stuff that our frequent listeners will be aware of. So don't be surprised if it gets a little weird whenever we get to star ratings. So we started this off with a great movie guy intro into this, full of imagery, even on-screen graphic quotes from Dante's Inferno being read by classy Freddie Blassie. And man, I would have never guessed that the WWF would have went highbrow and leaned into Dante's Inferno to put over this rivalry, the brother versus brother.
Especially after last week, all the gore.
Yeah.
And they go highbrow this week.
The caskets getting planted in the maggot-filled caskets.
Beautiful.
Once we got through the intro, the music playing sounded like the first few chords of Culture Club's Karma Chameleon on a loop, except like the Jim Johnston version of it. But let's remember that this is a pay-per-view. There is very little fucking around, and we headed into our first match of the night. Farouk, Ken Shamrock, and Steve Blackman defeat the Nation of Domination. This is The Rock, D'Lo Brown, and Mark Henry with Kama at the outside by pinfall in 13 minutes and 7 seconds in a 6-man tag team match. Oh man, did Farouk look out of place with Shamrock and Blackman. And by that I mean their outfits. He just didn't seem to fit. Shamrock and Blackman were giving the Nation of Domination fist salute there at the start. That felt really out of place also. But I like the inclusivity there. I love D'Lo Brown at the start of this, doing his bobblehead. D'Lo Brown is just such an entertaining guy to watch, especially in this at the start. He carried like the first half of this match. D'Lo did a great job working with Steve Blackman's fast karate style, too. I especially loved it when Shamrock brought Farouk in against D'Lo, and we've talked about it quite a few times, this dad thing that Farouk has going on. And whenever they got in there face-to-face, there was this really brief, like, disappointed dad moment where D'Lo was just scrambling to explain himself to Farouk. And then, of course, tried to attack him, but that was followed by Farouk taking the dad belt off and whipping the shit out of D'Lo. Me and the crowd were popping for that. And I just sat back and enjoyed this, which is something that I don't often say about 6-man tag matches, but I dare say that this is the first ever 6-man tag where I've been invested in the story and all of the participants. So first times for everything. I do still chuckle a little bit at some of Blackman's karate moves. I'm sure he can kick all kinds of ass with them, but just something gets lost in translation with Wrasslin. It just doesn't, I've said it before, something about them just doesn't fit. And even though the finish felt a little rushed, I really liked it. We got that great moment of Farouk pinning The Rock clean in the middle of the ring, and I wasn't disappointed in that, like the previous pay-per-view. It felt good for Farouk to win, but it also feels like this story is not over yet. So the booking on this angle remains solid. I did not quite care for the Michael Cole post-match interview, though, but that's just me being a nitpicking dickbag, and I don't like Michael Cole doing anything other than the limited things they've already got him doing. So yeah, I thought this was a great way to start the show. I love this story, and I felt like this was just a fresh new chapter of it, so I went with a very solid 3 stars. Joe, what'd you think of it?
Well, first I was surprised and a little disappointed that Farouk, Steve Blackman, and Ken Shamrock entered the ring to Ken Shamrock's music and not Farouk's. I feel like this is Farouk's match. But yeah, whatever. It did take JR very long to mention the catch as catch can style in this one. So that was nice to hear. Shamrock, to me, did not really look that injured. I thought he looked okay. He wasn't in the ring a lot, but he was masking that injury a little pretty good, I think.
Yeah, pump up the gas a little bit and you're good to go.
Yeah. And I loved seeing Farouk get the belt out and whip the shit out of D'Lo. D'Lo's really great in his role. He's one of the unsung heroes of the Attitude Era. You know, he's like considered lower mid-card, but he's very entertaining to watch. So
Yeah.
I think most of it is just his facial reactions and stuff, too.
Right.
Like, he emotes so much, and that's what you want out of a wrestler. It is like theater out there.
Yeah.
And you want someone to overemphasize things like he does, and I think it works out.
It's not just his face, it's his whole body, the way he carries himself through
his whole
moves
body.
and yeah.
We'll eventually see how well it carries over into a singles role, but out of all these factions that we see, like, he's just a great henchman for a faction. So I really enjoy watching him. The finish wasn't great. The Dominator wasn't great looking, but I don't know. This match was, for a 6-man tag match, it wasn't terrible. I was expecting it to be pretty bad, but it's not one of those matches that I'll go and rewatch, but it was an entertaining kickoff match, so I gave it 3 stars.
I'm pretty much in agreement with you two here. The first thing I noticed, like you did, Bartlett, watching Blackman, Shamrock, and Farouk walk out together here, they didn't necessarily go together, but out of this team of badasses, Farouk looked like the king badass. He's just a little bit taller, a little bit bigger. He looked like he was the leader out of this group, too. It's like any group he's in, he just automatically, by default, looks like the leader. The North Carolina fans here, not as receptive to Rocky as some of the other crowds we've seen recently. This was a pretty dominant Rocky sucks chant going on here tonight. And Rock, neither one of you really even talked about his time in the match because he wasn't in there all that long. But when he was in there, he adds there's that extra electricity that he adds to his moves, to his kicks, and just how he acts. And I thought the short amount of time that he was in there with him and Farouk really helped drive home this feud. And by the time we get to the end of it, Farouk does get a clean pin on The Rock, but we know it's not over. And for as many storylines that have been getting drug out, this is a storyline I'm very happy to see get drug out past this pay-per-view. I want to see more of it. I'll also have to talk up D'Lo. He just looked great. I had to mention that. Every time he gets in the ring, he just sucks me into these matches and the way that he plays them up. Mark Henry wasn't in there all that long, but his strength really is impressive. The way he tosses these 270-pound guys around, he tosses them around like they're 140-pounders or something. It's pretty hilarious. They're like children in there with this guy. At one point, he was at ringside. He wasn't involved in the match. And I loved JR's comment saying he's here to offer immoral support. That's just one of those great JR lines that you smile when you hear him slip that in there. 3-on-3 matches typically aren't my favorite. It's tough, even in a tag match, to focus or really drive home a match, but 3-on-3, it even gets a little bit more diluted. It's hard to get the flow going. And I thought they overcome that for the most part, but in the end, it was still a 3-on-3 match, and that ending was a little bit fucky. So I ended up going just 1 star lower than you two guys, but a solid 2-star, and I thought a pretty damn strong way to start this pay-per-view off.
Joe, what did Dave Meltzer think of this match?
He went a lot lower than us. He gave it a 0.5 star. He didn't really have many comments, but he mentioned Ken Shamrock was basically a spectator since he has an injured foot. But I don't know, I mentioned during my notes, I didn't think he looked all that bad.
Well, he didn't, but I guess I could agree he really wasn't in there all that much, though.
Yeah, Steve Blackman did a lot of the heavy lifting in the first part of this match. Just in case anybody out there might have forgotten, D'Lo Brown is a certified public accountant.
Yes.
I had no idea. I never heard that.
JR never misses a chance to highlight that fact. It's like the one stat that he knows about D'Lo Brown. Graduated with a CPA.
Well, he always mentions his college too, though, because he played football. I forget what it is.
Anyone
but
that plays college.
Yeah. I think Maryland, maybe? Was
Boomer
it Maryland?
I don't know for sure. Definitely not Oklahoma, though.
No, definitely not Oklahoma.
All right. So after that, the glass broke after a clearly edited cut in the program. That made me wonder what we were missing in this and how much may be getting cut by the Cock or whomever else. I mentioned that here because it was the first time it happened and it was a little jarring. It does happen multiple times throughout this program, and I think what happened is this is one of those pay-per-views or just really one of those video files that they had to slapdash together from a few different sources to make the final cut, because for later on in the show there's different letterboxing, there's different borders, and
it occasionally looked like a shitty VHS too at times.
Yeah. So as Jerry Lawler so aptly put it, Stone Cold Steve Austin had no business being there.
None.
Unfortunately, Austin went for timekeeper Mark Eaton, the person who rang the bell against Austin's interests on Raw last week. And what this boiled down to was Austin issuing a blanket warning that if anyone screws him, he will murder them. We then got a reminder of just one of the many ways that Owen Hart has been buried as a cage got lowered down from the ceiling for our next match. Triple H with Chyna in a cage defeats Owen Hart by pinfall in 12 minutes and 28 seconds to retain the WWF European Championship. Good Lord. I still hate the seizure entrance, but I was also happy that all of the new footage, including Triple H's Jizuka from last week, is included in it now. So,
including his water spurt out of his mouth. There's a quick cut of the water mist as well.
Yeah. This match immediately started off like a Greek tragedy. Commissioner Slaughter was there acting as if he has had some kind of authority. Owen was yelling, "That belt means too much to me, and I can't have another loss." And
yes,
that set the tone for me with this match. Something that jumped out to me that I loved right off the bat was Hunter selling in this. Whether it was in the entry lane before the bell or at ringside after, this was really fantastic, I thought. This was like Flair, Funk, dare I say Michaels level selling out of Hunter at the start of this. Things got ridiculous for me, though, when Chyna pulled a file out of her boot to attempt to cut the bars, and we did get a close-up of that. It was like a hacksaw blade on a handle.
Yeah, it looked like a prison shank. It had like tape around it as a handle.
That ridiculousness continued when Chyna bent the steel bars, and I had no idea how to react to that. I know how I'm supposed to react. I'm supposed to be impressed and flipping out about, my God, the ninth wonder of the world. By God, she's bionic. But at the same time, it was just a touch too much for me.
Like she's the fucking Hulk.
Yeah, right? But then, like, after she did that, she climbed out, and she was just hanging there. And I had no idea where that was supposed to go. Like, okay, so great, you bent yourself out of this cage, and now you're hanging still like 15, 20 feet above the floor, the concrete floor. Like, if you try to drop from that, you're going to break your freaking ankle. So, I don't know. She just hung there for a while, and then eventually the cage started coming down, though. I'm not sure if that was like maybe a bad timing kind of thing.
Well, what JR said that the Road Dog
was
lowering it. He added that to try and explain it.
Yeah, and we did get a brief glimpse of some dreadlocks sticking up out of the top of a golf hat, disappearing back behind a curtain somewhere. I did love Owen hitting try with the pedigree. I thought that was pretty neat. That was a nice turn of phrase there. And then the dirty finish interference to get Triple H the victory. Really, that was better than losing clean. But, like, we're just adding another hash mark to the tally of Owen Hart getting fucking buried in this feud.
It's pretty easy. Is Owen Hart on our screen? He's going to get humiliated.
He's going to get humiliated, yep.
Well, enough is enough.
I did note after that, we got Owen in that damn Michael Cole post-match interview giving the "enough is enough and it's time for a change" line.
Yeah, what could that change be?
Yeah, that will replace his terrible current entrance audio. So I'd much rather have Owen whining that line than that fucking weird-ass backup.
Garbage truck backing up.
He also dropped bullshit on the mic.
He did.
Yeah, he did. JR apologized for his profanity.
So this match was not one that I cared about going into it, because even before seeing the match results, I knew Owen wasn't winning anything here. There were moments that I enjoyed, but not enough to build this up for me. So I'm trying to be generous here. I ended up on 2 stars. Ryan, what'd you think of it?
From the beginning of it, I wasn't excited going in. We've talked about how, despite both of these wrestlers being excellent wrestlers, that we're just really tired about the storyline, and that didn't really end. These are 2 excellent wrestlers, and like when we actually focused on the match and them wrestling, they did great work together. But 3/4 of this match was Chyna up in the cage, Chyna dropping the hacksaw. I do wonder if that was by accident. Like, was she maybe supposed to just cut through them? Because that seems a bit odd. But anyway, then she bends them. Then she can't figure out how to get down. And like all this time, there's wrestling going on in the ring, I would expect, but we didn't get to see or hear about any of it because it was all about Chyna being hung. And she finally did get out, and then she didn't even do anything. X-Pac comes in out of nowhere with an extinguisher, a fire extinguisher, clocks Owen for his daily humiliation, and Triple H picks up the victory. This didn't do anything to extend their story. It's basically the exact same thing that's been happening for 3 months now. DX gets the best of Owen and humiliates him somehow. Nothing changes there. Just for the pure wrestling of it, I'm going to give it 2 stars, but everything else was just, I don't understand what they were trying to do to make me care about this match, because whatever they thought was going to do it failed miserably.
Normally we are praising Chyna on this show, and rightfully so. And I was not a fan of what they were doing with her in this one. I think they put her in a position that's not really her strength. This was a different type of acting that she had to display, and I just don't think it was right for her. For a while, there was some just odd behavior in that cage where she was like almost simulating like she was trying to pull the bars apart, but it didn't look like she was trying at all. It was very strange. She just didn't have any concern that she was in this cage and how she was going to get out. It was just sort of like, oh, I'm in this cage and I'm just going to pull these gimmicked bars apart later and then hang around until Road Dogg lowers me. I don't know. It didn't play off very well. I think maybe they could have put someone else up there, like X-Pac or someone like that, who would be able to act that out a little bit better. But yeah, I didn't really enjoy that. I do have to say, if you watch this as a standalone match, I agree. I went with the 2 stars as well, even though I'm sick and tired of this feud.
Yeah.
Like you guys.
Hard to deny the wrestling, though.
And I did think it was a pretty clever way of getting DX involved, because they're a hot item right now on this show weekly, or on the weekly shows. So I thought it was important to get them involved in this. So I did go with the 2 stars here. And I loved the Owen interview afterward with Michael Cole, teasing that enough is enough, time for a change. Mm-hmm. So that was exciting to see.
What'd Meltzer think about it?
He gave this 2 3/4 stars. He said that they had a solid but not great match.
DX didn't even, I understand needing them to, or wanting them to be on our screens, but like this didn't even really make anybody in DX look strong, or they just came away looking the same as they always have. Nobody got anything out of this.
Yeah.
Except Owen Hart getting buried.
I would argue that X-Pac, I think, looked good here. He's the guy that you have to watch out for. Like, what's he going to do? He's going to sneak in there and offer a fire extinguisher or another foreign object.
Okay. I'll take it, and I'll try to keep that in mind for the future. Because I definitely think you're right about Chyna in this. Total misuse of her.
Yeah.
Okay. So next up, the Fink was in the ring to welcome Mr. NWA, James E. Cornette. And let's keep in mind, this is Greensboro, North Carolina. This was a little bit of a homecoming for Cornette here. He spent so much time in the Carolina territory. I'm not trying to shit on that specifically, but let's go to our next match. The New Midnight Express, Bodacious Bart and Bombastic Bob, with Jim Cornette, defeats the Rock and Roll Express. Thank you. By pinfall in 7 minutes and 20 seconds, with the New Midnight Express retaining the NWA Tag Team titles as a result.
Thank God.
The one and only entertaining part of this was Jim Cornette challenging referee Tim White to a fist fight there in the middle of the ring during the match.
That was entertaining for you.
The only thing, because otherwise it was a dud. Joe, what'd you have on this?
I don't have a lot. This is a dud. This is a very tiny amount of people who would even remotely like this, so it's a huge waste of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I started off absolute dud out of me as well. They alluded at the start of this that this might have been a dark match, but it's a surprise. It should have stayed a fucking dark match.
Yeah.
To me, the only thing entertaining that came out of it was because just like us, commentary was ignoring it. The King really started it in on his super pervy personality in this. He was getting super giddy about the evening gown match coming up, so that stuck out to me, but nothing about this match did. Definite dud.
What'd Meltzer think?
He gave it 1 star. He said there was a big entrance pop for the Rock and Roll Express, but once the match started, the crowd treated this as the popcorn match.
Yep.
Which, good placement. It's right before the evening gown match, so everybody wants to see that.
It's funny you mention that, because one thing I did put in my notes, but I didn't even bring it up, was that they showed the crowd a couple times, and man, there were a lot of empty seats, so people were definitely using it for a piss break.
Yep, get your popcorn to see some full frontal nudity coming up here soon.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of, let's get the hell away from that. That poor... Oh, what a waste of 7 minutes and 20 seconds. So let's go backstage to Doc Hendricks, who was there with the artist formerly known as Goldust and Luna to talk about the evening gown match. They assured us that, and make no mistake about this, Sable would be stripped down to full nudity. No clothing, nothing at all, fully naked, and I quote, like a newborn baby.
Okay.
Naked. I don't know if you
I
heard
will
that,
be
but
tuning
naked.
in.
So, with that promise in mind, let's go into our next match. Luna Vachon with Goldust defeats Sable in 2 minutes and 35 seconds in an evening gown match. At least it didn't last too long. And just in case anyone missed it, at the beginning of this, Sable was sans Mark Marrow. JR informed us that Mark was too embarrassed to participate in this. I like that. Marrow did end up showing up, though, to distract Sable, who screeched like a fucking banshee at him. God, I hated it.
She did a lot of screeching.
And that was enough. Luna ripped the dress off and Luna won. Not nude, though, by the way. Top was on, bottom was on, the bra and underpants. Nothing popped out. I was keeping a very close eye on that. This wasn't the end of the segment, though, as Sable gave Luna another Sable bomb before the fight went down under the ring. Sable came out with Luna's clothes, and I really don't give enough of a shit to try to explain the finish. Suffice to say, it sucked. So, I'm going to say 1 star on this. But only because this match reminded me of the one and only thing that was ever entertaining to me about the whole Divas division. Not just this, but the whole Divas division in the WWF, and that's Jerry Lawler. You can't not smile listening to him on commentary for this. He and he alone eked out that 1 star. So, Ryan, what'd you think of this?
And it's the pre-puppies days, too.
Yes.
Which is good.
Yeah, the match itself, JR warns us at the start, we're probably not going to see many tie-ups or fireman carries. And the King comes back immediately. I don't want to see fireman's carry. I want to see tomatoes, globes, cantaloupes, headlights. I want to see the dairy farm. Ah! Good God, King. Could you be any more of a perv? The match is what we expected. It didn't last very long, and Sable had her clothes ripped off. I'm going to give it the 1 star, not just because of Jerry the King Lawler, but also the crowd definitely was liking this. They lost it. Just out of the pure crowd satisfaction has to be worth something. So I gave it 1 star.
And Lawler doing his high-pitched squealing, of course, whenever... Yeah. Well, so I loved at the beginning, before it started, there was a kid in the crowd with a sign that said, Sable free tongue bath, and with an arrow pointing down to him, which was great. I can't give this anything but a dud, because I was promised full frontal nudity. I was promised a newborn baby nude Sable. And we didn't get it. Nice jugs, though, in a comical way, like you would see the Jugs magazines back in the day, or Wendy Whoppers, like I've mentioned before. It's
something Al Bundy was looking at.
Yeah, they're just ridiculous looking. So that was entertaining.
Enhanced.
But yeah, it's a dud.
How would Meltzer think of it?
He gave it half a star. He said, obviously this was not a wrestling match, but it did deliver what it advertised. I would have to disagree.
It didn't. It specifically said full frontal nudity multiple times today and last week.
And last week. That's what I was going to say. You guys talked about it whenever you were doing last week's episode. Guaranteed.
Yeah.
Guaranteed.
From Sable herself. She was saying, I don't care. I'll walk around naked. Did you hear that? Naked.
Yep. All right. Well, how incredibly disappointing that was. Who'd ever thought that we would not get a promise fulfilled by the WWF?
It's catastrophic, is what it is.
It is catastrophic. So after that, Vince McMahon came out with the Stooges, Pat Patterson and Jerry Briscoe behind him, to reiterate that something catastrophic was going to happen tonight. I popped when Vince said that his mother had the privilege of giving birth to him in North Carolina.
In North Carolina.
And not just North Carolina, man, where he said that was at. Moore County, Pinehurst, North Carolina. That's where Kate grew up, my wife.
Oh, wow.
So he apparently was born right where she grew up. So that was kind of cool.
But the bottom line here was that Vince would not be responsible if Stone Cold screws Stone Cold.
A lot of playing around with that screw job in this show.
Especially that line was just really bonk on the head with that one.
We got a view of Sable backstage with Kevin Oh My God Kelly on the Superstars line. And God, I can't imagine what kind of a simp you'd have to be to pay $1.50 per minute to hear her screeching about losing the match.
They probably made a lot of money there.
God, this isn't video phone, kids.
Up all night.
Let's go now to our next match. The New Age Outlaws, the Road Dogg and Billy Gunn defeat LOD 2000, Hawk and Animal with Sunny, by pinfall in 12 minutes and 13 seconds to retain the WWF Tag Team Championship. Oof. The Outlaws had a blow-up doll dressed like some kind of North Carolina popular figure. Dean Smith, I think is what the name was.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that reference was. Some kind of sports thing, guy. I'm assuming.
Yeah, college basketball, UNC coach.
Okay.
Coached Michael Jordan in college.
Okay. So based on last week and this week, the Legion of Doom have ditched half of the crap that they were wearing. They don't have the leg guards or the welder's helmets anymore, but they do still have forearm gauntlets. Animal looked decent at the start, and nobody exactly looked bad. We had a much worse tag match earlier, but the thing is, I don't give a shit. And I honestly couldn't tell you who does give a shit, because while the fans were vocal, they weren't really cheering for anybody in particular. If anything, they were just happy taking part in the Outlaws DX spectacle rather than taking part in the match. And I was just zoning out until Jerry Lawler mentioned a supposed country music song called Drop Kick Me Jesus Through the Goalposts of Life. And I fucking lost it. Oh man. So that was good. And of course there were some shenanigans at the end. Hawk suplexed Road Dogg into a bridging pin, but the referee counted Hawk's shoulders instead of Road Dogg's. It was really fucking stupid, and it had to have been the first time that has ever happened in the history of wrestling, because generally when you suplex somebody and bridge it into a pin, the getting suplexed is the one whose shoulders are looked at. So
No.
This was a totally just bullshit finish. It was so fucking dumb. LOD, though, they were unhappy with that, so referee Jack Doan got a doomsday device. There's that. And I did pop again when Commissioner Slaughter and a couple of other guys brought out a stretcher for the referee. So, again, that was good. Yeah, this was 1 star for me. I didn't care, but nothing was offensive enough to drive it into dud territory. If anything, it would have been that finish. But like I said, I just don't care. Joe, what'd you think of it?
Well, I do have to give some credit to the LOD 2000 entrance. I do think that it is a pretty cool looking spectacle, especially with Sonny there.
Yeah.
I was going to say, especially with Sonny as a manager.
Yeah, but once the bell rings, it's the drizzling shits.
Yeah.
Sunny has she has a new outfit. She doesn't have the flames on her boobs anymore. It's like some sort of lingerie looking thing that she's wearing. But this is probably around the time that her hatred for Sable was boiling over in the back, because I don't think she's going to be around much longer. But it's nice to see her in this role. I think she does enhance LOD here.
She's the best thing about LOD right now.
But this was all just really shitty. There was a lot of rest holds. At one point, Animal just stopped selling completely because it looked like he was out of gas. And then this screw job finish, I guess, that I fucking hated. It made no sense. I gave it a dud.
Yeah, I didn't like much of this match. Going into it, we were already tired of it, and it seems Road Dogg is too, because as they come down, he says, we fought these fossils time and time again, and the outcome's the same every time. And he's right. How many times could they fight LOD, and how many times can they beat LOD? Add one more to that list here tonight. I liked JR calling Sunny's ring attire a Xena costume thing. That was a pretty good line out of him. But once the match started, Bartlett, you said there wasn't anything all that offensive, and I would disagree. On top of just their normal, boring and slow LOD wrestling, at one point, Hawk tries to body slam Ass Man, and I don't know, he just couldn't get him up, and he dropped him on the ground, and JR tries to cover for him, saying, oh, he must have slipped on the perspiration, and then Hawk, tried again and finally got him up that time. Just some really sloppy shit on top of a story I just don't care about at all. The back and forth between JR was at least good after it all got wrapped up and the LOD got screwed here. Him and the King are going back and forth about how, well, it does look like maybe the ref missed the call, and the King's like, are you justifying it? Are you saying he should have hit him? So just furthering building up that rapport between those two was good, but that wasn't enough to bring it out of dud territory for me. That's where it stayed.
Yeah, like I said, I didn't care. Didn't care enough to even notice anything bad because I was barely paying attention to it. What did Meltzer think of this, Joe?
He gave it 3/4 of a star. Said it was a typical LOD match. The stuff with Animal is decent, and the stuff with Hawk ranges from bad to embarrassing.
Ooh.
He must have caught that drop I saw.
The perspiration.
Yeah, not the perks.
So, and I know you've been waiting for this part. After that, we finally got the much-touted Sawyer Brown concert with Double J Jeff Jarrett on backup vocals, introduced by Tennessee Lee, of course. And I was honestly surprised that they kept this in. I don't know why, but I thought that the cop would have edited it out or something. And anyway, this was just really badly lip-synced. And the capper
just
to this...
Just like before.
Yeah. The capper to this was Steve Blackman attacking Double J on the stage until Tennessee Lee busted a guitar over Blackman's head. Double J applied the figure 4 while Tennessee Lee threw some kicks in there. JR yelled, "That's not what promoters do!" So we usually don't talk about this mid-match stuff, but just real quick, I wanted to ask you both. So now that you've heard the big hit that Sawyer Brown had, do you remember that song? Joe, why don't you take that first?
Unfortunately, I don't remember that.
Same here. I do not remember it, and I don't know if Double J added or hurt their singing ability.
All right. That still just shocks the hell out of me. But I guess if you didn't have a shit-kicking bus driver back in the day, then...
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, too, that if I'm in the entertainment business, I want a guy like Tennessee Lee as my promoter who's going to have my back.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and I do want to bring up, Bartlett, I'm glad Tennessee Lee is back for you coming back. He missed last week's episode just like you did, but he came back just for you.
Yeah.
I did enjoy Jerry Lawler's commentary during this. He was kind of trying to get JR excited for this performance. It was funny. And then
JR didn't care.
There was a fan yelling, "You suck," during one of the quieter parts of the song, which was fantastic. There was a "We want Flair" chant during the figure 4. I don't know if you guys caught that. And I found out some interesting news in the Observer. The singer for Sawyer Brown, not Jeff Jarrett, but the singer for Sawyer Brown went to high school with the shithead Harris brothers.
Oh.
So that must have been some kind of connection there.
I see. He didn't even look like a country singer. He looked like someone
like a
from
weird
like
soul patch.
Yeah, from like a 90s shitty indie band or something is what he looked like.
You know who I thought he looked like? Fuck. The guy the second singer in Anthrax. He was an Armored Saint. He was the singer of Armored Saint before he went to Anthrax.
John Bush?
John Bush, that's it. Yep, John Bush. I thought he looked just like John Bush. The only reason I could say that is because I saw Armored Saint with John Bush singing for them, and the guy looked exactly the same.
Kinda, yeah.
So you basically saw Sawyer Brown.
Right.
Armored Saint was a lot better. I'll just say that.
Did Jeff Jarrett go up and sing one of their songs?
No, but Tennessee Lee did hit somebody in the audience with a guitar.
So it was worth it.
Well worth it.
I demanded my money back. All right. After that, we got a pretty girthy video package to lead us into our next match. The Undertaker defeats Kane with Paul Bearer in 15 minutes and 57 seconds in the first ever Inferno match.
That explains that giant pipe that's on the floor this whole show.
That fucking thing looked like the pipe you see feeding the oil fields or something.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So I remembered watching this match live and going into this is the first time that I had watched it since I saw it live. So I was really curious to see how it was going to hold up. The flame effect on the ring, that was preceded by the sound of somebody turning on a gas grill every time that happened.
Yeah.
Which or a flamethrower, if you've ever heard that.
Yeah.
The same sound as a flamethrower.
And just to be clear, with anybody that has never seen this, the ring was surrounded by what amounts to a giant square propane grill burner.
But it does flame up, though.
When somebody twists a knob, it does flame up, yes.
Gerald Briscoe, when Gerald Briscoe twists that knob, like Hulk Hogan, I'm going to keep on twisting and twisting that knob, brother.
Oh, my God.
So this got going, and I just sat back watching. Like I said, I was really curious to see how it was holding up. I wasn't really taking many notes up until JR called Kane the one-eyed monster, which I popped for that. And things were just like cruising along until fucking Vader appeared. How the hell did he regrow half of his head after it got caved in with that enormous wrench?
Well, it just pushed its way back out, or he got one of those dent pullers for your car.
He stuck his thumb in his mouth.
Yeah,
and blew.
thumb in the mouth. And
Vader being there was unfortunate, but that did create a great spot for The Undertaker to dive out of the ring onto them over a wall of flame.
Yeah,
that was pretty badass. And this kind of turned, as it went on, it turned into more of like the cinematic type match. What made me realize that was the point where Undertaker was stalking Paul Bearer. I don't even remember where Kane was during that, but this was literally a horror movie scene. Paul Bearer running away from the Undertaker, stumbling and falling, and the Undertaker just slowly walking behind him. And eventually it's Paul Bearer stumbling and falling that allows Undertaker to catch up with him. And don't get me wrong, I enjoyed the hell out of watching The Undertaker plant that bass drum on Paul Bearer's head. That was a great visual.
Even got some color from it.
But the cinematic thing, it turns me off a little bit. This was good. It's just, I can see how in the future it'll get taken too far. And yeah, Paul got a little bit of color on that. That was good to see. The spots that ended this, and I didn't mention it before, but the way that you win an Inferno match is by setting your opponent on fire. So the spot where Kane ended up lit on fire was a bit of a stretch. It looked like Kane was deliberately sticking his arm in the fire and keeping it there until he made sure it was lit and then ran away with his arm on fire.
The man was catching his arm on fire. I'll cut him some slack.
Yeah, if he would have pulled his arm out a little sooner, he probably wouldn't have lost the match. And that's what this is all about, right? Winning the match so that you can be right in desecrating the graves of your parents. So anyway, like I said, that's what Kane getting his arm set on fire, that's what gave Undertaker the victory. And that's all I've got for this. I'll be honest and say that the Inferno gimmick was more of a distraction for me than anything. But we got another chapter in the brother versus brother story. We got the rare instance of Paul Bearer getting color. All in all, it was a fine match. I went with 3 solid stars on this. So Ryan, as our resident asshole for The Undertaker, what did you think of this match?
Well, I'll say the moment the match started and they showed the flames and this metal apparatus that was surrounding the ring, I thought it looked pretty damn impressive. It looked like something out of like a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie, like Kickboxer or Bloodsport, something like that. And having Gerald Briscoe control the flow every time there's a big bump, I thought really added to it. The first time we see it, the Undertaker goes up and he flies off the top rope for the old school. And the moment he takes flight, the flames shoot up above the ropes. And it is theater. This is theater 100%. There's no arguing about that. And then moving forward, every time there's a big slam or a hit with a chair, you'll hear that screech of the propane being turned up, and then boom, the flames come up. A lot of times these monster-on-monster matches, they're slow and methodical, but maybe the opposite of you, Bartlett. To me, the Inferno match did add to it. It was nothing completely special, but it was new, and to me, the visuals of it were pretty impressive. We got choke slams exchanged, fire shooting up during that. Paul Bearer, when they end up outside the ring and he chases Paul Bearer up to the stage and he puts him through the bass drum and he gets color. I wonder, I would imagine it has to be when Kane was applying that special effects gel to his arm, everyone was distracted looking up there, and then he covered his arm in that. And I know you said you didn't like how long he kept his arm in there and everything, but this was new territory for everyone involved and dangerous as fuck. They were dealing with some really serious shit here, and I know I've heard from The Undertaker in interviews talk about how bloody hot it was in the ring. Like, they were not prepared for how scorching hot they were going to be surrounded in that ring. So I went one above you because to me, the story has been great. This Inferno match was a spectacle, something we've never seen before. And I ended up going with a full 4-star, even though Vader was involved, which is pretty amazing.
I'm going to be honest, I completely forgot about Vader until Bartlett started giving the recap.
He's forgettable. He comes out for a second, then he's gone.
Yeah, so I didn't remember anything about this match except for the finish, Kane's arm catching on fire. That was the only thing that I remembered from this, so I really enjoyed watching this again. I did a little bit of research wondering, okay, Inferno matches had to have been done before. I got to see when and where. And there were a couple. There was one in Japan and there was one in Puerto Rico, I think. And those matches were much more dangerous, apparently. So WWF took a lot of measures here to be as safe as they could. In fact, one of them, I think it was the Puerto Rico one maybe, that involved Sabu. And I forget who the other one was, but it was so hot that they had to just stop the match after like a couple minutes. Again, I've said it before with Kane now. Kane is basically just a Vegas show. When you buy a ticket to a WWF live event and Kane is there, it's very likely that it's going to be like a spectacle Vegas show. This had to be enjoyable for a live crowd to see this, see that pyro, and to see The Undertaker do that dive over the top of the pyro. That had to be really cool for the live crowd to see. But when they started walking up to the Sawyer Brown stage, I thought, oh my God, what's going to happen here? And just slapping that bass drum over Paul Bearer's head. 5 stars immediately for me. I fucking loved that. I loved that. It was just so well done.
And when I saw Paul with that little bit of blood peeking out of the, I got hard.
Yeah. Yeah, just really well done by everybody considering what they were working with. These guys are not stunt men. And I think that with what they were working with here, I think they did a pretty good job. So I gave it 5 stars mostly because of Paul Bearer taking that bass drum to the head.
What'd Meltzer think of it?
He gave it 2 3/4 stars. He said, with the exception of one spectacular dive out of the ring by Undertaker, this wasn't much of a wrestling match, but it was an interesting spectacle to watch 2 guys not doing much of anything in a ring surrounded by flames.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I'd go so far as to agree with that.
Yeah, that's a little bit of underselling the match.
All right, so after that, we got another girthy package, then to lead us into the final match of the night. Dude Love defeats Stone Cold Steve Austin by disqualification in 18 minutes and 52 seconds, with Austin retaining the WWF Championship as a result. And this is another one that I have not seen this since seeing it live, so I was looking forward to two of my Attitude Era favorites in the ring together here. And I was not disappointed, at least at the start of this. It looked like everyone was keeping it stiff. No surprises there from Foley, but I think that's also a testament to how much Austin must have trusted Mick in the ring to bump like he was for him. I did like when Vince McMahon came out. JR has been really playing up the stooge angle for Briscoe and Patterson, so that's good to hear. I look forward to more of that. And again, I wound up sitting back and watching this because I was just enjoying it. Of course, there were plenty of points where McMahon got involved. Some of the high spots that I picked up here. Austin suplexing Dude Love into the ring stairs. That looked really rough. But it also set up a really great looking moment where Dude was like scrambling, trying to get over the barrier and get away, and Austin just like a rabid dog following him and just hounding him and beating the shit out of him on the other side in the crowd. That was a great visual. But really, and it shouldn't be a surprise, Vince McMahon was the real linchpin to this match. There were a few little bumps along the way, but eventually we got to the point where Austin was able to deck Vince McMahon with a steel chair and the fucking crowd erupted. That set up somewhat of a finish, kinda, where Austin pinned Dude Love in the ring and then counted himself because the ref was down. The crowd loved it. I loved it because I love it whenever the crowd gets involved in 3 counts. But it was curious when his music hit right after, as if it were official. At the end, though, the victory was given to Dude Love by Jerry Briscoe, talking to the ring announcer there. Austin got disqualified for striking a WWF official. Piece de resistance on this was Vince McMahon getting the neck brace applied and loaded onto a stretcher.
Motionless.
Cart him out of here.
I'm assuming that he would be getting worked on at some point there in the back.
North Kakalakian's finest. I'm going to go work on him.
I also assume that based on how commentary was talking about it, JR was talking like McMahon was fucking dead already.
He passed away. Yeah, he's gone.
I never saw him move.
He's a goner.
No chance in hell. And that's where this wound down, and we faded to black. So, was this a great match? Yes. Was Dude Love one of the main players here? Yes. Was this about Dude Love? Oh, hell no. Dude Love was a side character in the bigger story.
Is that not kind of the whole life story of Mick Foley, though?
Dude Love, at least, yeah.
Putting other people over, that's what he does.
Dude Love, yeah. Mankind had plenty of his own moments. Cactus Jack, too, outside of the WWF.
Outside of the WWF. But Mankind, as great as he is, he's mostly losing to put other people over, though.
Yeah. But Mick Foley gets to the point where, and Mankind, the Rock and Sock connection, for one example, but
that's after he got his ass kicked by The Rock multiple times.
Mick Foley as just a person himself, maybe the 4th character, Mick Foley himself. But anyway, Dude Love was a side character in the bigger story, and that's fine, because Dude did a hell of a job here. I look forward to getting more of him in the future. But the real story was McMahon and Austin. That got a whole new level of interest out of me. Vince has officially taken a chair shot, and so for that fact alone, I went 4 stars. Joe, please, what did you think of this match?
Well, shame on me, because I didn't expect to be this entertained by this match. I don't know why. Maybe just the build up to it.
Yeah.
It's Dude Love turning heel, which I don't really like, but this was, consider the 3 people who were involved here, Steve Austin, Mick Foley, and Vince McMahon. It delivered on all aspects here. They're really leaning hard into that screw job finish. Again, this is something that the screw job is talked about nonstop, but this is something that nobody really ever talks about, is how much they leaned into it after the fact on TV. So it's funny to see that. that. If you wanted to be a nitpicking dickbag, countouts are legal in this match, apparently, but you wouldn't know it. They were barely in the ring during this entire match. How can Dude Love even move at all after landing on the stairs the way he did? That looked incredibly painful.
And he does that constantly, that spot.
Yeah. It's so quick it's hard to tell, but it's like his calf just like hits the corner of the steps. Like he's got to be in incredible pain after these shows, but
it's one of those spots that's like there is no way to just take that softly. He's smacking his calves off metal.
JR explained it very well. He said that he's broken in half. There was a shot of them, Dude Love and Steve Austin, fighting briefly in the crowd, which I thought was a thing of beauty because the crowd was surprisingly giving Austin his space. Like they were completely getting out of his way. It's like that just shows you how much respect Austin has from these fans.
Yeah.
And man, what a fantastic chair shot right to Vince's dome. I could watch that 100 times over and just love it.
And so could these fans.
These fans exploded. Like JR was screaming at the top of his lungs and you could barely hear him because the crowd was just exploding over this. And then there's more. But wait, there's more. We get the stretcher, we get the neck brace on Vince, and the Fink tells us that Austin was DQ'd, which I like that because I was thinking up to that point, I was like, okay, are they going to like explain this on Raw the next day? Like, why did the music play when match didn't really officially end? But then the Fink just shuts it all down and says that Austin was DQ'd. So I am looking forward to where they go with this tomorrow night on Raw. But this was chaotic at times, but highly, highly entertaining. And I gave it 5 stars.
Yeah, I completely agree with both of you. This was amazing. And again, Joe, like you said, shame on me. I wasn't expecting it to be as good as it was. And why? It's Dude Love and Stone Cold. Why wouldn't this be great? It was. This is two old buddies, former fucking road partners slugging it out. Like, of course they're going to put on a good show for us. One thing that stuck out to me pretty quick, though, too, is I think Stone Cold has finally, I don't know if he's healed, if his neck's completely healed, or if he's just more comfortable and maybe feels safer in the ring, because we're getting back to a little bit older of Stone Cold style. The last couple times we've seen him, he's been pretty protected. This is the first time where I thought he was really taking it to someone out there. And those clotheslines, there were about 4 or 5 of them.
Yeah.
That he just fucking clocks Dude Love. Dude Love does the full flip. Just fantastic looking clotheslines. And that's this entire match. Just fantastic looking. Everything they do together worked, including when we start getting Mr. McMahon involved. That was a great spot. They end up on the ramp, up on the bandstand, just like we saw earlier. And Mick takes a bump off. He just gets tossed off the top right onto his hip onto the concrete. And it just made me cringe thinking about seeing Mick walk today.
Yeah.
And how tough it is for him to walk. Just seeing him take that concrete hip smack was not nice to see. But I don't have much more to really add about the match other than, like, go watch it, because this is what a pay-per-view match is supposed to look like. I would say at least the last one and even the last 2 matches we've seen Stone Cold in haven't looked as good as this one does. And because of that, and also because I was completely taken off guard by Vince McMahon taking such a vicious chair shot to the head, I wasn't expecting that. And that put it over to a 5-star for me. I was sitting around 4-star, but then Vince getting clocked, fucking jacked it up 5-star. I can't wait for Monday Night Raw at this point. What more could you ask for out of your pay-per-view than your audience saying, I can't wait for this to continue?
Yeah. Joe, what'd Meltzer think of it?
He really liked it. He gave it 4 stars. He said it was an incredible performance of bump taking by Dude Love, and Austin's timing was good as well.
Yeah.
And Ryan, he said the highlight was Dude's selling of some great clotheslines in the ring and crazy bumps out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that 100%. All right. Well, as I said, it wound down and we faded to black, so we need to talk about the most important question of all. At a premium price of $29.95, did you get your money's worth? Ryan, why don't you take that first?
I would say I definitely got my money's worth. There were a couple stinkers, but that's it. The rest of this pay-per-view was strong, and these last two matches, I probably would have ponied up the cash just to watch them.
Yeah, gone are the days of 5-star scientific matches from Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. Those guys are gone. So we are in the Austin McMahon era now. And I'm getting 5-star entertainment out of that, along with The Undertaker and Kane, along with the Rock versus Farouk feud that's going on, along with the Whoppers. So I say yes, I got my money's worth.
Yeah, we're 3 for 3. I said yes, just between the opener and the finisher. I felt those two cappers were great for me getting my money's worth. The Inferno match was just a bonus. So, all right, Joe, do you have some numbers from the Wrestling Observer for us?
I do. It's a little surprising. I guess that main event wasn't enough to carry this into the thumbs up territory for the Observer readers. 28.2% thumbs up.
Oh, wow.
40.9% thumbs down and 30.9% in the middle. So right in the middle there to thumbs down territory.
Much, much lower than I would have expected it.
Yeah, that feels like I can't remember ever having you say that low of a rating.
Yeah, it has been a long time, yeah. The best match was voted as Austin versus Dude Love. The worst match was voted as the Midnight Express versus the Droopy Arm Express.
What do you mean? I thought they're from the South. They would have loved them.
Yeah. Dave Meltzer says, as a show, it was an interesting spectacle, far more glitzy and more soap opera-ish than recent pay-per-view events, but as is typical with the comparison to WCW, lacking once again in comparative wrestling depth, this finished with a stronger main event, and for the most part, delivered match finishes that, rather than add to the storyline, seem more like quickie ideas to get out of matches.
I think I agree with Dave on that for the most part. Not all of them, obviously, and I don't think he said all of them, but
yeah, there
were a few pretty questionable finishes in this pay-per-view.
Yeah, definitely.
Triple H Owen one.
Yeah.
The LOD one.
LOD.
This Austin one. Yeah, it was a little screwy on a lot of these finishes, yeah.
Though with this final one, I know perfectly where this story's going. I don't know if you two do, but
I do not.
I remember, the only thing I remember is I know we're going to get that collaboration between Vince and Dude Love. All I remember is Vince dancing at the top of the ramp with those women and Dude Love.
And just one teaser, during this story arc, I believe we're going to get the first year fire.
Is this the same story where Vince gives Mankind the hardcore belt, or is that something totally separate?
Yeah, that's the ultimate end of it
Okay, all right.
Yeah, we got a little bit before we're getting there, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't really remember any of it, so I look forward to reliving it as we go through.
That was it from the Observer. So yeah, shocked to see those numbers from the readers.
Yeah, me too.
All right. Well, that's it, folks. We are done with this one. I want to thank you again for joining us. If you like what we're doing here and want to connect with us, you can email us at WRASSLINRAW. Just add at gmail.com to the end of that to submit questions or comments. Check us out on social media and on every podcast subscription platform. While you're there, don't forget to follow and subscribe to get every episode of Wrasslin Raw coming to you every week. Give us a 5-star review and tell all of your friends to tune in to the most incendiary Monday Night Raw review podcast on the airwaves. Next week on Wrasslin Raw, we're going to take a look at the Raw that aired on April 27th, 1998, with matches featuring the DOA, Barry Windham, and many more. So, for Joe and Ryan, I'm Jason. This has been Wrasslin Raw.